Hi, I'm Julia Sutherland and thank you so much for joining us this morning for the first in this 2019 series of Tune Into Tourism webinars. Now for the next 6 weeks we're going to be focused on digital tourism. So today we're starting at the beginning and we're looking at how you can create a plan to manage all of your online activity. Makes sense, right? I've got two fantastic guests as per usual. First of all, we've got Chris Torres, who is the Director of the Tourism Marketing Agency, a brand and digital tourism expert with over 26 years industry experience. I don't know how he's managed that considering he looks so youthful. And you also speak at many...
tell something different.
Yeah, that's working in tourism, I think, isn't it? I'm only joking. So you've worked for many years in this business. Why is having a digital strategy for your business so important?
It's such an important aspect. Without a cohesive strategy, your business has no direction, and you need that direction to be successful these days.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
We've also got Libby Forbes, who is partner and marketing manager at Forbes of Kingenny Country Resort. Libby, tell us briefly what your business is. What you do.
So we are, like you said, a country resort just outside Dundee in Angus, and we have lots of things on site. So fishing, golf, a restaurant and bar, and we also have event suites, so we run a lot of events within that, so lots of things happening.
So you've got a lot to manage there, yes, so you really need to have a plan or else it would be very difficult to manage all that. Fantastic. Well, the most important part of this session is obviously you, and we want to know what your questions are as well. So Richard is going to be sitting in the chat box, which is just to the right of the screen there, where you can ask your questions and also share your experience. Richard.
Thanks very much, Julia. Yes, I am here ready for you guys. If you've got any questions, any comments, any really good bits of experience or best practice that you want to share with us, I will be able to put your questions directly to the panel, and just let us know where you're watching from. Already, we've got lots of viewers this morning, and we've got Joe, who's in Edinburgh, Caroline, who's in Armadale on the north coast of Sutherland, Celia's in Egg, and we've got Carol, and we've got Angela watching. Oh, everybody, at Nethy Bridge, everybody. Right, so listen, have a listen to what everybody's got to say. If you've got any questions, just let me know via the chat box and I'll get them to the panel. So, but for now, Julia, back to you.
Thank you very much, Richard, and welcome everybody. I'm glad to have you with us. So, Chris, starting with you. Now, when we were chatting earlier, you said that we don't think like a tourism business when we are coming up with our digital strategy. What are we thinking like?
It's quite a controversial thing, but I say that tourism businesses shouldn't act like tourism businesses. They should act like a media company. Because if the amount of content that you have to create and put out there on various platforms, that's the sort of mindset you really need to have in creating good content. So you should be a media company. Now
that's pretty intimidating, especially if you're, your business. The reason that you're gotten into it is because that's what you're passionate about and that's what your skills and talents lie. Running a media company sounds rather difficult.
It shouldn't really be, to be honest. It's, the content that you can put out there is pretty much what you're doing every day anyway. If you're out and about doing tours, or if you're in a hotel and you've got your staff doing certain things, film that, document it, put it out there on various videos or written content. Or you have the tools there actually, and with phones these days you can easily create content and be a media company, so it's not as difficult as it used to be. Okay,
Libby, how did you first approach coming up with a strategy for your business?
I think probably was looking at what our brand is, and really for us it's about peace and kind of tranquility in the countryside, and also bringing into that light adventure. So we've got the golf and the fishing aspects as well, so bringing that all together. And then developing a plan from there, and really we look at all of our different departments too, and try and tie it all in.
And what Libby's saying there about sort of that brand personality, which is a bit one of those buzzwords, but basically that is knowing who you are, isn't it? And that's so important.
Oh, definitely. Without a personality and without a voice, basically, you've got nothing to say. So, and it's your personality that draws people in and wants people to experience what it is you've got to have. So it's such an important aspect.
And how do you figure out what that is? And it sounds silly, doesn't it? We should all know who we are, but sometimes you really need to have a think about specifically what it is that you're selling, and who you are.
No, you do, and one of the things I always recommend is two things. Ask your customers what they feel your business is and where you are, and doing a sort of a brand workshop with your own staff and your own teams, figuring out what each person thinks that the business is about, because sometimes it can come up with things that you just never thought of, or someone might think that your business means something else when you actually feel it's something another thing. So it's asking the people around you and asking your customers is the best thing to determine what your personality is going to be about.
Mm-hmm. So. And Libby, you did that as well, didn't you? To look at sort of what your customers thought of you. You do that ongoing, actually.
Definitely, and to find out what our customer profiles are as well. We kind of use our own knowledge about our guests. Mm-hmm. So we speak to all the different heads of departments and see, because they're kind of on the front line, they know exactly who the customers are. So it's speaking to them and getting that information, as well as looking at other things online, like Google Analytics. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if once you've figured out sort of your brand personality, who you are, sort of, I guess, seeing yourself through the eyes of your customers, and getting that consistency across, everything that you do, that's really important, that part of that. As you mentioned there, knowing your customers, knowing what the buyer personas are, another one of these marketing terms. But there must be quite a few for your business.
Yeah, definitely. I think we do split it up to like golf, fishing, but then obviously there's crossovers as well. So the people who are staying in our lodges are going to use the golf course. They're interested in food and drink. So for us, it's really about finding out what they're interested in. It might not just be as easy as saying golfers are into golf. Mm-hmm. You're wanting to target everything else as well. Mm-hmm.
So how do you actually do that?
So we do it through Google Analytics. So we look at the different information we're getting from that, who's coming on. We also look at Facebook Insights. And again, just speaking to our team, they kind of know our customers, so finding out information that way as well. Mm-hmm.
Chris, you talk about kind of using those analytics actually to help inform your strategy, sort of working backwards for what you're already doing and where you're having success. What's a good example of that, for example, from your website?
Well, from your website, obviously, looking to see who comes to your website on a regular basis. You need to have the right tools on your website to basically track all this information. But when it's people coming to your website or coming to your Facebook, even spending time, for example, if you're on Facebook, going through each one of your followers to sort of see, who are they, where you can basically see what their interests are and if they tie in with what you're trying to do, and you can build up a persona from that as well. So there's various aspects you can look at to build up that persona. So
you can sort of work backwards as well as,
It can be quite time consuming, and I would recommend actually just going through Facebook, even if you've got thousands of people, spending time to actually go through every single one, just to say, right, this person likes golf or this person likes fishing, and actually building that up. The more information you have, the better. So.
And that information is there. Facebook knows so much about our lives. It's quite frightening, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of the best platforms, I would say, for finding out information like that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, so you've got your Google Analytics. You can see where traffic's coming from. So, for example, if you've got quite a lot of people looking at your website from a country like, say, France or whatever, then you can use that information to maybe change what the content is. Think about, what you could offer for those customers if that's where you're having particular success.
It's interesting you mentioned France, because with the one of the biggest, next to England, the next biggest demographic coming to Scotland is people from France.
Very interesting. Yeah. Okay, and I know we were talking about cruise tourism actually in our last series, and I think Germany seemed to be a big, another big market there. So that's something to look for. For you, Libby, you realised that you're a 4-star resort, but your lodges are dog friendly, and that you turned into a strength as well, didn't you?
Yes, because it's interesting, because although we're a 4-star resort, we found that a lot of the people looking for dog friendly would normally go for luxury, but they're maybe saying, okay, we'll go for 4-star, which means they're going to spend more, hopefully. Yeah, exactly. If their dogs can come too, and it means that they'll, have more money available, so they'll maybe spend more in the bar. And it means that we know exactly how to target them. If we know that they like that sort of thing, we can suggest things in the local area that they would like, and it would appeal to them.
So that's a good example there, Chris, of taking information that you've got through your research and then actually applying it. So, and as you were saying there in Facebook, you can add the word luxury to as your tags, because then that's going to appear in your sort of target market in their feeds. What's another example then of taking the information and then actually applying it?
Good question. If you look at, for example, on Facebook, so I'm thinking of this is a quite a funny little thing. We had a customer who we were helping who wanted to target people who are for Valentine's Day, for example. So the thing about Facebook is people will people will mark that they've just been recently engaged, or this and that, or they've just been married, or just in a relationship. So the amount of information you can delve into Facebook at a deep level allows you to then create things like that and allow you to target the right people in the right ways. So another example was, this was a while back, it wasn't in tourism focused, but we had a company who was wanting to rent a flat. In fact, this would work for Airbnb as well. Wanted to rent out one of their accommodations, but it was to rent out a flat to rent. And we were targeting people who were just recently divorced. So, because people will mark that on Facebook as well. So sometimes, and then you can target them, because they were also looking for maybe accommodation. So there's various things you can do, and Facebook's phenomenal for finding out information like that.
It's like surveillance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Scary. So do you use that? I guess if you have wedding, your wedding venue, so you can see people that recently engaged.
Absolutely, and also we know that Christmas time, lots of people get engaged, as is Valentine's Day coming up. But
people are so
predictable. But we then use that information and push out, Google, not Google ads, Facebook ads even, targeted on what we offer. So our wedding venue, to people who say, like you said, say they've just got engaged, which is so useful.
So we're talking about really understanding your customers and being able to get as much information about them so you can target your activity. And I guess we've sort of jumped forward a little bit, because being on those social platforms is key, isn't it, at the beginning of creating your strategy and working out which platforms are going to be the best. I'm thinking Facebook probably for everyone is one of the best ways really of reaching people.
Yeah, I would say when it comes to tourism, the three main platforms for me are Facebook, Instagram and YouTube. So Instagram is huge in tourism. If you don't have an Instagram account, you really need one.
Okay, so you can't get away from that. That's
depends on the demographic. Facebook tends to be a slightly older market. Facebook is a younger market, so depends what you're going for. But I would say definitely both you need to have. So. Did
you mean Instagram is younger?
Yes.
And Facebook's older. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. And YouTube you mentioned there. Now I was really interested to hear that actually YouTube is the second largest, search engine.
That's correct. Next to Google, which Google happens to own both. So.
Yeah, interesting. And actually 79% of people actually search YouTube for travel ideas.
That's right, yeah. So they search YouTube for travel ideas, but about 67 or 63% of them actually don't even know the destination they're going to go to yet. So actually doing content about your destination is equally as important as trying to sell your products, your experiences. So that's a huge aspect of it.
So these channels are really a huge part of our strategy now, probably more than ever. And video content, I mean, we spoke about this a couple of years ago, and we predicted that, by the time 2019 rolled around, something like 90% of content on Facebook was going to be video. And that does seem to be coming true. Yeah, so video, how important is video content for you in your strategy?
Yeah, huge. I mean, even seeing engagement in video is so much more than just a normal post. For us, we use things like one of our F&B staff, our food and beverage waiting team, is a singer, so she does our live music nights, and we video her, like snippets of her singing, and they always get lots of engagement through that. And we've also used things like fish stocking, so when the fish are getting stocked, we video it, and then you can also use that as almost a competition to say, guess how many fish were stocked today. And likewise, again, we've used a video before that's worked quite well of, so we have hens on our farm, so using their eggs, so from collecting their eggs to our kitchen team then using the eggs to us then serving it and showing the kind of the countryside as well, so tying everything in.
So the journey of your breakfast.
Yeah, exactly. That,
And that's so important, isn't it, Chris? Because we talk about everything in tourism is about being human, isn't it? And about having that relationship that it feels authentic. And so creating video content like that really reflects who you are and what your business is and the people that work for you is so important, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. No, I'm a big believer in you're doing it the right way and utilising your staff and utilising people in your own niche who are an expert in a particular field. If you're doing whisky tours, for example, and you have someone who's an expert in whisky, they should be doing lots of video content on a monthly basis, if possible, about whisky tasting notes or talking about how what whisky goes with food and that type of thing. Use the people around you. And there's a little caveat on that. If you've got a member of staff, say a tour guide, who can't get across on video the passion of why they love doing what they do and the story of why of that area, it sort of gives you an indication that maybe they shouldn't have been a tour guide to begin with. So.
Okay, ooh, harsh. I hope nobody's getting fired after this session. Okay, so we're looking. So we've looked at who we are. We've worked out who we are, so we can be consistent with our messages across all the different platforms and in all our communications. We know who our customer is, so we can target them, and we've talked about some ways of doing that. What are the other sort of foundations then, Chris? Is there anything else that we've maybe got a bit of an issue with that we should be looking at in terms of getting the basics right and having everything in place?
Yeah, I know we spoke about this before, but Scotland are so far behind when it comes to booking online. We, as a nation, we are still, technology-wise, still way behind. There's still too many businesses out there that still don't offer online booking. And if you want to get that customer there and then, but get their buy-in there and then, you really need to have that aspect of it. When you look at other destinations, they're so far ahead of us. It's unreal. So Scotland, I've got a bit to go yet, I would say.
Well, looking at other destinations, but actually something else that you had mentioned was looking at your competitors is another thing that you should do when you're coming up with strategy. So look at what Google, the sort of keywords that you would be looking for.
That's exactly it. You know, people have, when they think of their competition, it's the ones that instantly come to their mind, when that's not really what it should be. You know, it should be who basically comes above you on Google. That is your competitors, because they're the ones that are going to be seen first before anyone else. So do a search on your main keywords. List the top 3 or 5 of who comes up before you or amongst you, and that's who you should be looking at to then compete against, basically.
So what are you looking at? Looking to see what they're offering, what content they've got that's engaging with
people?
Yeah,
what content they've got that's engaging, what they're doing on social media, how often are they posting, are they doing any paid advertising, and whatever they are doing, you need to do more of. That's basically what it comes down. Again, coming back to the media company, you need to do more stuff than your competitors to then be seen more. So that's basically what it comes down to.
Well, you certainly can't be doing less.
No.
Because, like we know that we talked about search engine optimization before. That's one of the things, it's absolutely crucial, isn't it? You've got to be hitting all those points that they rank you by, ranking factors. Okay, well, I think we should probably see if there's any questions coming in, Richard, in the chat box.
Thanks, Juliet. We've got lots and lots of comments from people and people watching all over the place. We've got people watching in France, so bonjour to our French people. We've got Fenella and Caroline having a nice chat between themselves. But basically, I've got a couple of things. People struck a chord with Jennifer, what you said about basically everything being a content idea. And then people are also sort of interested in the sort of concept of really sort of truly knowing your own identity as a business. And once you know your own identity, then that will help you find what I guess is classed as your sort of ideal customer. Natalie has got a straight up question, which is basically, her question is, what are the benefits of Instagram and what are the benefits of Twitter? Because she says that she feels that Twitter's not really being sort of mentioned by you guys, and has that maybe fallen a bit by the wayside? And then just the final comment before I pass back to you, Diane, you're my favourite viewer today because Diane is watching from Where the Stags Roar in Newton Moor. Isn't that awesome? Right. So Julia, back over to you.
Well, I don't know if there's any stags roaring or otherwise, but we'll do our very best to answer those questions. Just to flag up, we are actually in this series focused on digital. We have got 2 sessions focusing on social. One which is going to be all about Facebook and Twitter, and another one which is on Instagram, which, as Chris said, is becoming so important for tourism now. You really need to be on there. So, but I guess just very briefly, Chris, just now, Twitter. What do you think about Twitter?
Twitter is still an important platform, but I tend to find Twitter is more about offering information about, for example, if you were doing a tour, for example, and the weather happened and it sort of stopped that tour from happening that day. It's more about information like that rather than more promotional stuff. People, they see it in bite-sized chunks, and with the amount of information being posted up on Twitter, sometimes it's hard to see a lot of that information. So it is an important aspect to use, but not so much as Facebook and Instagram.
I guess the thing is, we're now very visual, and is, as you say, about video and also the pictures on Instagram, and that is how people are kind of consuming content. It's less written. Although I think you do a blog, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, which is still key because that gets the links in there as
you
well.
still need the text around the videos that you're doing anyway. That's still an important aspect.
So how often do you blog?
Well, we do it once a month. Probably should be more than that. But and we tend to blog about stuff like information, like free information that we know as locals to the area that are going to benefit the people coming to our lodges or the fishermen. So we've done blogs about local, with our self-catering accommodation, there might be food that they're going to buy that isn't necessarily from Sainsbury's and Tesco. So we look at kind of little niche places local and nearby that they can then use. So it is about giving them free information. And yes, it does take time, but we're hoping it kind of builds a relationship where they then think, oh God, this is a great place to get good information.
And that is such an important element. There were two things really there that are an important part of a digital strategy. One is, as you say, Chris, give. You know, the best form of advertising is to offer something for free, which, Libby, that's a great example there of being a resource, being somewhere that people are going to come back to find out more. And two, tying in with other businesses and thinking about selling not just your business, but the area.
Definitely, no. As you mentioned, the best form of marketing, it's about giving out as much information as you can for free. You know, doing travel guides or things about the area and about the destination that people will want to, as you say, keep coming back to as a resource. They might not necessarily buy from you straight away or book with you straight away, but if they know that your place, your website and your content is exactly what they want, it's a resource that they want to visit. Eventually, that will then get passed on to other people, or they might book themselves or refer them on. So it's such an important aspect, I would say.
And you actually have a personal experience of some content on somebody's website totally changing your travel plans.
Yeah, so this was a good 10 years ago now, but me and my wife went to Japan. We were going to book Japan before we started our family. So we were planning to go for 2 weeks, and we saw one piece of video content from this company who eventually we booked through. So we extended our stay by an extra 2 weeks, so we stayed a month, visiting around, walking around Japan, looking at different things. We even saw the sunrise at the top of Mount Fuji. They convinced us that we can climb to the top of Mount Fuji. We're not the fittest people in the world, so we thought that's never going to happen. But we did, and that experience has stuck with me forever. And that business that I've referred on to countless others. I still speak about it in my events that I go to and things like that. And that was all off the back of one piece of video.
And what was the actual video?
It was a video of one of their tour guides, basically talking you through the experience that you were going to get as he walks you through Japan and the various cities and things like that. And the good thing about his name was Tyler Palmer, and the good thing about him was that he actually met us at the airport. It happened to be him. So the fact that we saw him on a video, it was like meeting a friend for the first time in a long time. So that sort of barrier was already broken. And on top of that, we're actually friends with him on Facebook even still. We still chat to him. So it's building up relationships again as well. And again, that was all off the back of one video. So be human again. Be human. And Libby, you obviously great examples of that, introducing people to the farm, the produce, the people, singing and everything. Painting that picture so people feel like they know you.
Definitely.
So you had another example actually, Chris, which I think we can have a look at. Talking about getting your staff to create content, why they love what they do is, their passion is the reason that they do that job, and to be able to convey that to potential customers. You have got an example here which we'll play. Can you talk us through it? Yeah, so this is from Greyline, Iceland. So it's one of their staff members talking about a bit of culture and their language that people may not realise. Against a nice background. It's just filmed on a phone, so again, nothing too extravagant, but I just felt it was a nice piece of content in terms of using your staff to get across a message. So. Okay, let's have a look at that now, hopefully.
That I feel sometimes that we Icelanders are misunderstood. I think it is simply a cultural difference. For example, do you know how to say please in Icelandic? We don't. We don't say please. It's just not in our vocabulary. We're Vikings, for heaven's sakes. Do you know the equivalent for please is gerðu það, which quite literally means do it. That's our please.
So it just shows you there, you don't need to actually have fancy equipment or anything. You can really do it on your phone. And these days, pretty much everyone's phone's got, a fantastic video. Well, iPhones, most phones these days recording 4K videos, so you've really got no excuse not to use video these days, to be honest. It's such easy tools to use. So. And then it's tax deductible. I think there's lots of questions coming in the chat box or comments. Richard?
Yes, thank you, Julia. Yeah, there's honestly, this is great. Thank you so much to everyone who's watching. I have got a number of questions and a number of comments, so I'm going to rattle through them. I haven't jotted them down, so let me just have a look. No, LinkedIn. Is LinkedIn something that you guys use? So there's a question that's from Natalie. Cameron has got a question which is basically about, you mentioned paid advertising. Would you say it is most cost effective? What would you say is the most cost effective way of driving traffic to your site? Is it PPC, YouTube adverts, Google AdWords, Facebook adverts, or is it something else? Which is quite an interesting question there. And then there's some other questions, really good simple comments here from Diane, Fraser and Gillian. You know, Alison here about the best content that you can have is simply sharing what you love about your area, and then your passion just absolutely shines through. And then Alison says, if you've got a cooperative of businesses in your area, and then you can share each other's information and share each other's content, then you can end up working like a sort of pack of related businesses. Listen, there's more questions and everything, but there's probably enough there to be going on with for the time being. But Julia, come back to me before the end.
Thank you very much, Richard. Well, starting off there with LinkedIn, my personal nemesis. I don't know why I hate LinkedIn, but is LinkedIn useful for tourism?
If your target is B2B, yeah,
right.
It can work very well. But it's a channel you really need to work hard on. You have to make up the connection, more so than Facebook. You have to build up the connections. You have to build up the relationships on LinkedIn even more. In terms, it's actually more social in a way. It's strange, but because it's more business related, you have to earn that trust with the other people there. So,
do you think it's worth spending the time doing that?
Yeah, again, if you're B2B, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Anything that can help you get a extra business, then it's always worth it, putting that time and effort into it.
Now, I'm going to stick my neck on the line here. There was a question there about the best way to advertise. Is it advertising, I guess, Facebook or whatever the other things he said? I'm going to stick my neck on the line and say, is it actually content that's your best form of marketing?
Organically, yes, but that will take time to build. So I always advise doing paid advertising while you're doing that, especially if you're a new business starting out.
And what's the best kind? What's the most effective?
I tend to find AdWords works very well, but it can be expensive depending on your target market and your destination. I tend to find Facebook advertising in terms of for the amount of money you spend and the return you get is so much better. In fact, the best form of Facebook marketing is to do a really cheap ad, spending £5, £10 a day on an advert that drives people to your website, but then do a retargeting ad, again spending £10 a day, for example, targeting the people who visited your website. So Facebook tracks that as long as you've got the Facebook pixel code on your website. Okay. So that allows you to be even doubly targeted on your ads the second time round. And
people
then
that are already interested.
And you don't need to put a lot of money in that at all.
Okay, Libby, what do you do that's effective?
I would probably say, like you mentioned, Google ads and also Facebook ads. And for us, it's if we are doing something, if we have a theme for the month, then it's making sure that it's on our website, it's on the Google ad, it's also on the Facebook ad, and there's kind of a synergy between them all, so that we're kind of maximising everything. So you're maybe not just using one, you're actually using a few. A
combination, and that's probably
And you mentioned content, which is so important, especially if you're doing Google ads, because your Google ads works to a quality score of 1 to 10. The higher the quality, the lower the cost per click is. So, and Google also looks at the content on your landing page from that ad. So if your content on your landing page is relevant to your ad, that drives your cost per click down, and you get more clicks for your money as well.
So talk me through, explain that a little bit more. What does that actually mean then in terms of being relevant? How do you...
No, you're not doing, for example, say you're doing an ad on whiskey tasting, but you're directing them to your homepage. That's not going to work. You want to direct them to a page that's actually relevant about whiskey tasting, for example. So the content has to be relevant to what it is you're advertising. Okay. And Google sees that and it adjusts your cost per click accordingly. So.
Okay, so the more specific,
the more optimised you are, the less cost effective, the more cost effective it is.
Yeah. In terms of cost, then talking about spending money, how much should you be spending on your digital activity?
Good question. I tend to advise businesses to say you should be spending probably no less than 7% of your turnover. Because if you've gone through a busy period or a quiet period, your budget adjusts depending on what your percentage that you've got. But put in as much as you can afford, and as long as you're getting money back, more money at the end of it, the other side of it, it works, and that's going to do for about 7%. I would say is probably a good starting point.
Libby, you're slightly more than that, you think?
Yeah,
maybe?
we're probably about 9%. Yeah,
About
that we
9%.
use, yeah.
But it's so important, isn't it, Chris? It's more important really than anything else if in terms of actually generating that.
Well, yeah, and it's good having a sort of set amount like that every month, because most businesses do it. We've all done it. We'll maybe spend £300 here or £50 here, and then before you know it, you've spent thousands of pounds. But if you actually keep to a budget and it allows your strategy to be a lot more focused, it just helps your business in a much better way. That's everything.
And I guess the more focused you are, the more you can see then specifically what's working and what's not working. How do you manage that, Libby?
Really, in regards to content, probably we're looking at Google Analytics to see how much traffic we're getting to the pages and how long they're staying on them, if they're interested, and then we tweak it with that information so that, and see if that then helps, or if it doesn't help, and then try something else. So really it's kind of about, for us, trial and error a little bit.
And you also tie in Mailchimp, don't you, so you can see
Yes.
what you're getting from your mail outs?
Yeah, absolutely. So our Mailchimp is tied into our website, so we can see, we tend to put kind of a hidden landing page on our website, and like you mentioned before, with content that's relevant to the mail campaign, because there's nothing worse than you have a mail campaign that's talking about one thing and then actually you're just putting them to a page that's just super generic. So we try to make that theme roll into the page on our website as well. And from there, we can see how much conversions we get, so how much actually money you're making from the Mailchimp campaign. So yeah, which is kind of what you want in the end.
Exactly. So it's really easy actually now to see exactly how successful you're being with each individual campaign.
Definitely, and one sort of caveat we put on that is to be patient. Too many people will change their strategy after a few weeks or a month because something they feel is not working, especially with video content. Now, if you're doing a video series like you guys are doing, sometimes it can take 10, 20, 30, 40 videos before it really takes hold and the marketing really starts working. It's just sometimes it's just being a bit more patient as well, and don't change too readily as well.
What was the statistic you had about the number of times people had to see something?
Well, usually when it comes to marketing, there's usually about 7 to 8 touch points that people need to see where you are, whether it's on Facebook or your website or ads, and that it usually takes about 7 touch points for people to actually then register. Okay, let's see what this company is about.
7 touch points. And so what are those touch points then?
Again, it could be finding an ad on Google, it could be seeing your ad on Facebook, or seeing a blog post, or pieces of content as well. So it's whatever those touch points are. It could be various things, but it's...
Or finding you on YouTube, which is quite often where people are going to be going. Okay, I'm going to see if Richard's got any questions, because I think he's waving at me wildly in the corner. Richard, what have you got?
Yeah, I'm waving at you wildly in the corner. Yeah, I've got loads of questions. Firstly, quick question. I'll whip through a few of these. But somebody who's asking this one, Evelyn, is 7% just for digital advertising or for all types of advertising? That was a question. And then somebody else has got this, where is it? Editing software. Somebody was just asking about what easy type of, if you're making little films on your phone, what's the best type of editing software? I could answer that very briefly. If like with my phone, with this computer here, you just use iMovie. It's really simple, but you also got an app on my phone, an iMovie app on the phone where you can do it. But one thing I would say, we're talking about the phones, the Samsungs and the Apples and everything, they do film in this glorious 4K high definition, but for certain types of like Facebook videos and maybe Instagram videos, I don't know if you need that. And I've found that when you film in that sort of resolution, it can really stress out your computer. You can kind of stress out the processors in your computer. So sometimes it might be, if it's just a short little thing for Facebook, you can lower the quality that you're filming in, and it makes it much quicker and easier to process and edit. So there's that thing about that. So that was the one thing there, about 7% on advertising. And then a simple question from Celia: what is Mailchimp? There you go, back to you, Julia.
Thank you very much, Richard. Okay, so the 7% there, that is, are we just talking about digital?
I suppose it depends how much your turnover is, to be honest. I would say, yeah, these days most marketing should be digital anyway. So I would say yes for digital. If you are doing print advertising and things like that as well, or newspaper adverts, which in my opinion don't tend to work these days as much, unless it's tied in with a digital campaign, I think it's a waste of money. I would say don't put your money into paid print advertising, do it into digital.
Okay, controversial. The death of print continues apace. Libby, what about Mailchimp? Can you answer that question, please?
Yes, definitely. So Mailchimp is kind of something we use to send out emails. So you can create lists of your customers. So you can get customer details from if they stay with you and they're happy for you to send them information on offers. You then create a list and then you create a template and a campaign. So you can send out to them. Mailchimp can optimize the time. If you choose a date, they'll say, okay, it's best to send out at 5 p.m, which is again really useful. So you're not playing a guessing game. And then from there, they have analytics on the emails as well. So they can tell you how many people opened, what they clicked through on, what the most clicks was at, and when they clicked through to your website. So yeah, it's really, really valuable, and we find it is one of our most valuable marketing tools.
It is a great tool. And Chris, talking there about mailing lists, I guess we should touch on, obviously, the laws changed in terms of data and how you store people's data. What do we really need to know as tourism businesses about GDPR, about the new regulations there?
Well, to be honest, GDPR is basically just rules around some common sense. To be fair, it's making sure that people that are on your list are people who actually signed up and asked for that information. Don't buy email lists. No, you should never buy email lists because they tend to be, well, it's not right in the first place, and they tend to be years out of date anyway. But it's building up. It's through your content, and no, you mentioned there obviously the stuff about Mailchimp. One of the best ways of building up your marketing list is to, if you have a newsletter sign up on your website, don't just say it's a newsletter sign up. Say they're going to get something back in return. Again, the whole give, ask. Say it could be, if you're doing again whisky tours, say you're doing a 12-part whisky tasting or tasting notes sort of emailer going out, and Mailchimp is actually very good at doing an automated series, so you can actually, when somebody signs up every month, they'll get sent out an automated, and that's something you can have created ahead of time, so you've already got that there, and it's just something that keeps ticking away in the background, and you're building up your email list that way. So yeah.
And you're saying this give, ask. So about 80% give, 20% ask.
It's a cliche, but it's the old rule of 80-20, the 80-20 rule marketing. No, 80% should be giving out really good advice, giving out really good content. The other 20% should be then asking for the sale, basically. So, yeah.
And Libby, you had a nice example of, you did a like and share for an anti-Valentine's comedy night.
Yes.
Which sounds right up my street. And so you managed to turn the engagement for every single person that engaged with that, whether they won or not, into an opportunity then to give them something. And
yeah, definitely. So we did a like and share competition for our anti-Valentine's comedy night, and everybody who liked and shared, obviously there was only one winner, but we messaged everybody to say they could get a discounted ticket rate. So hopefully then they would book, and because obviously they're already interested if they're liking and sharing the content and they like the content. So yeah, we do that with most like and shares.
So I guess these content marketing, this notion of content marketing is really what's taking over kind of the way that we sell our business, isn't it? It is about constantly thinking about how we can share what we do with people so that they then engage and want to.
It's being honest about who you are and what you do with your customers, and also putting out a lot of good content like that as well helps with your rankings on SEO, for example. No longer gone are the days where you can stuff lots and lots of keywords on a page. Google realises that, no, they changed their algorithms to stop that from happening. It's about putting out proper content, readable content from a human. That's what it helps.
And you can look back. We've got we did a session on SEO, which was really useful. There's lots of tools there, so you can have a look at how well your website's performing and what you can maybe be changing to have it perform better. I wanted to also talk a little bit more about the analytics side of things. How do you use those the information that you get from analytics then to inform how you change, what you're doing?
Well, it's basically what we said earlier on. It's looking at who's visiting your website, which destination they're coming from. Some of the analytics you maybe gather, like especially from Facebook, what age groups they are, that type of thing. And it's using that information to then tailor your content for those age groups or those destinations or those demographics. No translations we haven't touched on, but if you've got a lot of people coming from France, a lot of people come from Germany, some of your websites should be translated in those languages, because I've actually got a French person working with me in my business who comes from Paris. She always searches on Google, in the French Google, even though she's based here in Glasgow. So it's tailoring your content even for those sort of languages. But again, and you'll get all that from the analytics that you gather.
And you spoke there about Mailchimp optimising the time that you post. You can get that information as well from Facebook, can't you? You can see when people are most. You can go into the insights page and see when people are online and they're most likely to engage with you as well on there. Well,
yeah, definitely. You'll find, obviously you can look at Facebook to find a bit more. Again, looking at the destinations that they're from. And it's tailoring your content and your posts to the time zones of those destinations. So yeah, it's similar to what Mailchimp does. So.
And Libby touched on linking in with other businesses in the blog, for example, tagging them and thinking about selling your area. How important is that then in your strategy to sort of link in within the local area?
I think it's massive. No, if you're especially if you get partners in those businesses as well, if they're giving business over to you and you're giving business over to them, it helps your destination in its entirety. So to me, it's vitally important. But also in an SEO point of view, you're getting backlinks from each different other people's websites as well. So that sort of helps. It makes you seem to be more part of the community rather than just a sort of faceless company in a way. Sort of thing, so.
An entity in and of yourself. Yeah. And what about having ideas for strategies if you do have to change, having a sort of bank of ideas of how you might do things differently? How much do you need to plan ahead?
I would say plan ahead as much as possible in terms of the content. If you've got various people in your team who are experts at something, if you can do 6 months, 12 months content ahead of time, do it. Have that there ready, and if you need to tweak something further down the line, if circumstances change or something changes in the industry, you can then just tweak the content, but you've already got it there. So try and do as much in advance as possible. Do it in batches. Yeah.
And Libby, you do that, don't you? And
yes.
you look back at analytics to see where you've had spikes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we kind of plan 12 months, but really it's within those 3 months that we're really focusing in on and setting the themes or reevaluating and deciding, is that exactly what we want to go into and filling out our kind of plan. But like you said, we do use Google Analytics, and we write little annotations so that we can see when we've done certain activity and how, because I know you understand it right now, but then in a year in advance you've forgotten what you did and you're like, oh, what did I do to get all that traffic? But when you put in the little annotations, when we put out an email or when we do a certain campaign on Facebook, it's then super easy to look back and say, oh wow, that really worked, we can do that again next year.
Right, so you can actually add a note.
It's adding notes to it, yeah.
Right, that's a really useful tool to be using. Richard, have you got any more questions coming in the chat box?
Lots and lots of comments. Thanks again to everybody. But just a very simple question from Heidi. Do you guys have any suggestions for an Android video editing app or any other video apps on the Android that are easy to use for beginners?
Thanks for that, Richard. Chris, do you have any suggestions? I'm not an expert on Android.
I have to say I am an iPhone Apple fan, so when it comes to Android, I am lost on that one, to be honest. I'm not too sure. Well, there is a lot of online tools you can use. You can upload your video online and then edit online. And YouTube, I believe, also has some form of editing tool that you can use as well. So you can even upload your video to that and edit straight within YouTube as well. Okay, well
that's a good place to start. And we will be doing a session all about Instagram and Facebook. So I imagine we'll look at that in those sessions as well. We are running out of time a little bit now. We've just got a few minutes left. I guess what the sort of summing up, sort of how often should we be reviewing this strategy? Is it an ongoing process?
I would say so. No, definitely have a base strategy maybe mapped out for 6 months, for example, at the very least. If you could do a year, great, but have it sort of mapped out. But monitor it every single month, or as often, even every week if you can. But if you monitor it every single month and just adapt it for whatever's happening in your industry or happening in your destination, or if you get different people coming from different places and backgrounds, then just tweak it from that. But I would say at least having a sort of 6 months base strategy, and then you can always add to it and tweak it from there. So.
Fantastic. And what about, just one more thing, online security? How important is that, especially if you've got booking on there? How do you make sure that you are, secure and your site's secure?
Your website should always have an SSL certificate on it. Okay. It actually helps your rankings as well. Google will, actually, if you look at mobile searches, Google will have stopped or push you right down the rankings if you don't have a HTTPS on your website.
And how do you do that?
If you're a hosting company, you should. It tends to be free now. Some companies still charge for it, but you can basically set up an SSL certificate with your hosting company, and they'll do it for you. So.
Okay, great. So I guess final message, Libby. What would you say was your sort of the main thing that you've learned, or the main message that you would give to other tourism businesses in terms of having that digital strategy?
I think definitely having a plan is huge, and like we mentioned, having the 3 months set out so you know exactly what you're going to talk about. You've already sat down and discussed it, so it's not just you're doing it off a whim. And one thing I would say about video is we found it really useful just to buy a really cheap tripod just from Amazon, and it's been so much, it just looks so much more professional than someone at a wobbly hand.
Yeah, and you can film yourself on a tripod, and then it's just, wobbling is not
great.
Not good. And I wanted to ask one wee question, how important is it that everybody in your team knows knows what your strategy is. How do you communicate that with your team?
Yeah, so we send out emails to all of our heads of departments, but we also have a Facebook group for all of our staff. So we try and communicate. Yeah, we try and communicate through that and sending them information so they're aware of all the offers, because they're the ones that are facing the customers too. So they can chat about them as well as us doing the online, so that it all flows, so that it's not they're coming in and asking about something and they've got no clue. So yeah. Definitely.
Really important. Really important that everyone knows. Chris, what's your final word of advice? We haven't mentioned you've got a book coming out, Lookers to Bookers, which might be a useful tool.
The book's coming out called Lookers into Bookers, and it's basically sort of showing how to market a tours and activities business from start to finish, right, all the way from branding, the voice that we spoke about, all the way through to looking at analytics and everything.
So your top tip is buy my book. But what is the main bit of advice do you say?
I would go back to the beginning, is knowing what your brand voice is, because without your brand voice, you've got nothing to say. So you need to get that nailed down in terms of what your messages are going to be, the tone of voice, your personality. Without that, you've got nothing to say.
It's so important to get that right, isn't it, from the very outset? I guess we should have very final thoughts from Richard in the chat box before we say goodbye.
Thank you, Julia. You had such a deep sigh there of like, I guess we should have a final thought from Richard in the chat box. I just want to say thanks to everyone. I think there's something that's come up that we probably will need to address in the webinars coming up in the future. I think it was Katie made a comment about feeling slightly uneasy about sort of stalking customers on Facebook. And then Vivian's brought up a very good point here, which is like, what are actually the Facebook sort of rules and regulations about offering things and tagging people and competitions and all that kind of stuff. So we've run out of time for today. It's a bit too vast, but I think it's something that we can maybe look at and get a bit more detail about in future webinars. But final thought, thanks to everyone who's been involved today. Like, there's been loads of you, loads of comments, loads of stuff. So thanks very much. And we'll see you next week. Back to you, Julia.
Yes, the question that you asked there about Facebook and maybe that uneasiness about how much you can really kind of mine that information, we will talk about that. We've got a session all about Facebook and Twitter coming up. So look out for that and take part in that session to find out more there. But all that's left to say is to thank both of my guests today. Thank you so much to Chris Torres and to Libby Forbes for taking time out of your busy schedules, very busy by the sounds of it, and sharing your information and expertise with us. And remember also, a good resource is to look out for DTS experts doing workshops or one-to-one sessions in your area. Look at the website digitaltourismscotland.com to find out more, and there's lots of resources on there as well, especially to do with digital, obviously. As ever, this full webinar will be available on YouTube. Good old YouTube. If you look for youtube.com/HIE Communications, that's where you'll find the playlist there with all the webinars. And we'll also have some little highlights that you can watch and some top tips from our guests as well. So please do join us next week. We'll be sending you out the email with all the information on that. You can follow us on Facebook. We'll promise not to stalk you too much, at Highlands and Islands Enterprise, and also on Twitter at HIE Scotland. And for now, I've been Julia Sutherland. Thank you so much for taking part.
That was more comments there than ever before. And more like last time there was like 120, watching live, which is last time we were at 60. So that's really good. And then it goes up with live viewers is like we're going to do some pieces to cameras. So live viewers are can vary from like the last series was about 50, 60, and then over the day everybody then kind of watches later in the day or watching on YouTube. So they end up sometimes with like a sort of up to 500 views by the end of it. But that was really good.
Yeah. Hope that came across okay.
Yeah, it came across really, really, really well, and the set looked great.
Okay, that's what's important.
But no, that was really good, and everybody was really like, thanks so much at the end, like loads and loads of comments thanking everybody at the end for a really good session. But there was like people were saying like they want, there was people saying I think we could take some lead from these comments and look through them all of like people want, how do you make a video on your phone?
Yeah, well, we will talk about that in
how do you then post that video to Facebook.
What we should do is
there's a lot of Mrs. Miggins in a B&B in
yeah,
Orkney.
definitely.
Do you know what I mean? Who's like, what the fuck?
We should actually do it.
What is a smartphone?
Yeah,
why like this, right, then
exactly.
Yeah.
Why are people taking pictures of their breakfasts? I run a bed and breakfast. I've won awards. Yeah, mate, get on Instagram. You're an actual legend with those sausages.
Yes.
Those sausages, legendary, mate.
Right, so what we'll do just before we release you.
Oh, and there's somebody said, where did you get the mugs? They're great.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
They are cool. I like
Do
them.
you need me anymore? No. Thank you.
Okay, so before we release you into the wild, just want some top tips. So 3 things. So, or just one. Yeah, actually, you could just do one. Just say your top tip, and if you can make it really practical. So something that people could do today. The one thing that they could do today in terms of kind of their digital strategy.
Julia, let's just step to the wall for a second, thanks. I can keep talking, it's just while I frame this up.
Yeah. Are you going to do the tunes in the back?
Yeah, I was just going to try and...
So we're doing Libby first then, are we?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's so many things, and I'm trying to decide which one to use.
Well, you could do 3 then. Say